Good morning. What I'm noticing on the Go Formative is that you guys are having trouble when you have to do some of the reciprocal functions on the unit circle. So I want to take a minute and just make sure that you understand the process here. So to find secant of 5 pi over 6, we're just going to do a couple of examples. I'm not sure these are even ones that you have on your homework. These are just ones that I'm seeing you're having trouble doing. So secant of 5 pi over 6. We find 5 pi over 6. So that is right here. And then secant is the reciprocal of the x-coordinate. So the reciprocal of the x-coordinate is, we have to take the flip of negative radical 3 over 2. So I'll flip negative radical 3 over 2, and I'll get negative 2 over radical 3. Now, that's right, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we don't like to have the radical in the denominator. So we fix that by doing what we call rationalizing the denominator. And to rationalize the denominator, we're going to multiply by a giant 1 that's made up of whatever the square root is that's in the denominator. And then we're going to simplify that. So multiplying our fraction, we know we multiply negative 2 times radical 3, and we're going to get negative 2 radical 3. And then we multiply radical 3 times radical 3. So when you multiply radical 3 times radical 3, there's a couple ways to think about that. Let me do this off to the side here. Radical 3 times radical 3. You can think of that as either radical 3 squared or radical 3 times 3. Okay, and either one of those, this will lead you to the square root of 9. All of these can be simplified to just 3. So the denominator of my fraction is just 3. And then that's the secant of 5 pi over 6. All right, let's try the cosecant of 225 degrees. So we find 225 degrees on the unit circle right here. And the cosecant means flip the y-coordinate. So we're going to flip negative radical 2 over 2. Okay, so that becomes negative 2 over radical 2. Once again, we need to do some rationalizing. So we'll multiply by a giant 1 composed of whatever the radical is in the denominator of our fraction. And then we'll simplify. So multiplying our fractions, we know we do negative 2 times radical 2. That's just negative 2 radical 2. And then when we multiply the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, once again, think of that in a couple of different ways. You could either think of it as the square root of 2 squared, in which case the radical or square root symbol and the squared symbol will undo each other. You can think of it as radical 2 times 2, which is the same thing as radical 4, which all of those are going to simplify to just 2. So we get this fraction, and that's pretty good. We're really close. However, there is a giant 1 here, right? If we look at that fraction, right here is a giant 1. So we can do one more simplification here and write this as just negative radical 2. So the cosecant of 225 degrees is negative radical 2. All right, just one more quick one. We'll do a cotangent. Let me move this a little bit. I actually think I'm going to change that. Let's make it the tangent of 11 pi over 6. All right, so we find 11 pi over 6. Okay, and that's right here. And then tangent, if you remember your unit circle information, tangent of an angle is the sine of that angle over the cosine of that angle. And the other way we can think of that is the y-coordinate over the x-coordinate. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, all right, sine is negative 1/2, and cosine, this is sine, and then this is cosine. So I'm going to write this as negative 1/2 divided by radical 3 over 2. Now this is a little messy, so let's talk about how to fix this. So when we divide fractions, look, what I'm really doing is this, 1/2 divided by radical 3 over 2. Okay, now when we divide fractions, that's the same as saying take the first fraction and multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. All right, so now let's multiply our fractions. Negative 1 times 2 and 2 times radical 3 will end up giving us negative 2 over 2 radical 3. Now that's not bad, but we still need to do some simplifying. So let's work on simplifying this. The first thing I notice is that we do have a giant 1. So let's take care of that giant 1, and that's going to leave us with just -1 over square root of 3. And then I'm going to rationalize again. So I'm going to multiply by a giant 1 composed of whatever the square root is in my denominator. And I get negative radical 3 over 3. And then that is the tangent of 11 pi over 6. All right, I hope this helps. Make sure you guys are on task, and I'll see you on Monday.